13 traits of people who have suffered deeply. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Carl Jung. Welcome to Spiritual Wisdom, where we dive deep into the truths that awaken the soul. Have you ever wondered why some people seem distant, overly independent, or emotionally guarded, yet possess a quiet strength that can't be explained? These are often the hidden traits of those who have endured profound pain. In today's video, we'll explore 13 powerful traits of people who have suffered deeply based on Carl Jung's insights into the human psyche. These are not weaknesses, but signs of resilience, awareness, and spiritual awakening. As you listen, ask yourself, do you recognize any of these traits in yourself or someone you love? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your story. 1. Hyperindependence is a wound, not strength. Many people who seem fiercely independent didn't choose to be that way. They became that way out of necessity. Behind the hyperindependence is often a childhood where emotions weren't safe, support wasn't available, and asking for help came with punishment or disappointment. These individuals carry the weight of everything on their own shoulders, not because they want to, but because they learned early on that vulnerability is dangerous. Carl Jung called this adaptation the false self, a version of ourselves we create to survive emotional neglect, to appear fine, when deep down we're carrying years of unmet needs. When a child is forced to grow up too quickly, perhaps due to absent parents, emotional abandonment, or being expected to take care of others, they learn that their feelings are a burden. Comfort is replaced with criticism. Asking for help is met with silence or shaming. Over time, these children internalize the belief that needing anyone is a sign of weakness. So, they become their own protectors, their own providers, their own emotional support systems. They grow into adults who are strong on the outside, but silently hurting on the inside, people who never ask for help, who never let their guard down, who suppress every need to maintain the illusion of control. This isn't maturity, it's survival. It's what happens when trust is broken too early and connection feels unsafe. And yet, society often praises these people for their strength, not realizing that what they're admiring is actually unhealed pain in disguise. Carl Jung understood this dynamic deeply. He explained that when the real self is rejected or unprotected in early life, the psyche constructs a mask to shield the core. That mask of the false self helps us fit in, function, and avoid further rejection. But over time, that same mask becomes a prison. We forget how to receive. We fear being seen. We live with a constant low-grade exhaustion from doing everything alone, all while telling ourselves we're just being strong. Modern life reinforces this wound. In a culture that glorifies independence and self-sufficiency, people like Sarah, a successful, reliable, emotionally guarded woman, are everywhere. She meets every deadline, comforts everyone else, and always says, "I'm okay." But at night, when the noise dies down, there's an ache she can't name. She doesn't cry because she doesn't know how to anymore. She hasn't asked for support in years, even though she's needed it more than ever. Her hyperindependence isn't empowerment, it's exhaustion. It's a lifetime of being there for everyone but herself. Healing begins not by doing more, but by softening. It begins with the realization that strength is not found in how much we can carry, but in how willing we are to be human. We don't need to prove our worth by bearing everything alone. Needing help doesn't make us fragile. it makes us real. To step out of the false self is to reclaim the right to need, to trust, to rest. It means recognizing that true resilience includes softness, openness, and the ability to let someone in. It means being honest enough to say, "I'm tired," or "I can't do this alone," and brave enough to believe that someone will stay. Hyperindependence may have protected you once, but it doesn't have to define you forever. Carl Jung taught that transformation begins with awareness. And when you realize that what you called strength was really survival, you give yourself permission to finally heal. Have you ever felt like asking for help makes you weak? If so, share your story in the comments. Your voice could help someone feel less alone. If not, comment, "I will reflect," so we can begin healing together. 2. Excessive empathy comes from childhood survival. They feel everything, not just the pain in the room, but the tension behind the words, the silence that screams louder than anger, the emotions others haven't even acknowledged yet. This kind of empathy isn't just kindness, it's hypervigilance, trained from childhood, forged in the chaos of unpredictable environments. When you grow up around emotional instability, you don't get the luxury of waiting to be told how someone feels. You learn to sense it early, quickly, silently, because your safety depends on it. You become a master of reading micro shifts in mood. You notice the way someone exhales, the tone of their "I'm fine," the quiet energy behind a door. It's not a gift, it's a defense. Empathy, in this context, becomes armor, not a way of connecting, but a way of surviving. You needed to know if your parent was angry before they spoke. You needed to know if a situation was about to turn cold or dangerous. And so, you tuned your nervous system to the frequencies of others. But the price of that tuning is high, because as you grow, that pattern follows you. You start absorbing emotions that don't belong to you. You begin overcaring, overgiving, over-explaining, and eventually, overbreaking. People call you too sensitive, as if it's a flaw, not knowing that this sensitivity was once your shield. They praise your compassion, never realizing it's carved from pain. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And this is exactly what happens. Most people with excessive empathy don't know it's rooted in trauma. They think it's just who they are. But it's not empathy from presence, it's empathy from fear. And the truth is, that kind of empathy slowly erodes your spirit. You say yes when you want to say no. You show up for others when you're falling apart inside. You soothe everyone's storm while quietly drowning. You forget that you have needs too. You forget that you matter too. But then something shifts. A spiritual awakening begins not in light, but in fatigue. You realize that you're tired of carrying emotions that aren't yours. You start asking, "What about me?" For the first time, you recognize the cost of always being available, of always holding space, of always abandoning yourself in the name of being good. And in that moment, you begin to reclaim your boundaries. You begin to realize that love doesn't require self-sacrifice. That real connection doesn't mean emotional absorption. That true empathy allows you to care without carrying. This is where the healing begins. You start unlearning the roles you were never meant to play. The fixer, the peacekeeper, the one who makes everything okay. You start recognizing that your energy is sacred, that your peace is non-negotiable, and you begin protecting it not with walls, but with truth. You start offering empathy from a place of wholeness, not depletion. You stop performing safety for others and start choosing safety for yourself. You learn to stand in a room full of emotion and say, "This is not mine." You learn to walk away from chaos without guilt. You stop trying to rescue people who aren't ready to save themselves, because you finally understand that your worth was never in how much you carry, but in how deeply you've healed. And that's where your power lives now, not in the endless giving, but in the quiet, sacred return to yourself. If this message about empathy and survival resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your experience in the comments below. Let's keep uncovering the hidden roots of who we are together. 3. Fear of true intimacy. Those who have suffered deeply often carry invisible scars that reshape how they experience love. They long for intimacy, yet when it finally arrives, they freeze. It's not indifference, it's defense. They've been taught, sometimes brutally, that connection can lead to abandonment, and that vulnerability can invite betrayal. So even when they care deeply, they hold back. The heart wants to open, but the mind remembers everything that once tore it apart. Carl Jung's concept of complexes explains this well. Past traumas, especially those involving love and trust, form emotional patterns that live in the unconscious. These complexes get triggered by present relationships, even when there's no real threat. A kind word can spark suspicion. A caring gesture can provoke withdrawal. Why? Because to the wounded psyche, safety feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliar feels dangerous. What was once protection has become a prison. This is not rare. In today's world, more and more people are living like Elena, a woman who spent years building emotional walls to survive. She's smart, successful, and seemingly open. But when someone shows her genuine affection, she panics. She pulls away, not because she doesn't want love, but because love has always ended with pain. Her nervous system braces for impact before there's even a reason to. She becomes guarded, critical, distant. And yet, her heart aches for the very closeness she fears. This is the paradox of deep emotional suffering. People say they want intimacy, yet subconsciously avoid it. They sabotage promising relationships and justify it with logic. "I'm not ready. I need space." Or, "It's not the right time." But beneath those words lies a frightened voice whispering, "What if I trust again and it all falls apart?" It's not about the other person. It's about an old story repeating itself in a new chapter. Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Many people unknowingly live out this pattern, pushing away what they crave most and calling it protection. But protection rooted in fear eventually turns into loneliness. These individuals aren't cold or incapable of love. They're exhausted from feeling like love is always followed by loss. Their fear can manifest in subtle ways. They cancel plans last minute, stop replying to messages, or become emotionally distant without explanation. To outsiders, it may seem confusing, but to them, it's safer than being open, only to be wounded again. Behind the hyperindependence is often a child who had to grow up too fast. Behind the silence is a nervous system still bracing for impact. Healing this pattern doesn't mean rushing into intimacy or pretending the fear isn't real. It means creating space to understand where that fear comes from. It means recognizing that the people who triggered the pain in the past aren't the same as those standing before you now. It means slowly learning that being loved doesn't have to hurt. Carl Jung believed that awareness is the beginning of all transformation. When we begin to see our fears clearly, they lose their power. When we choose to respond instead of react, we shift the cycle. Fear doesn't vanish overnight, but trust is built moment by moment. You begin to show up differently. You learn that you don't have to abandon yourself to be loved, and that real love won't ask you to. Those who have suffered deeply may love slowly, but when they do, it's with a depth few can match. Their tenderness is hard-earned. Their loyalty is rooted in survival. And once they feel safe, they bloom. Comment below. I am open to safe love if you're ready to heal and trust again. And if this message speaks to you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs it. 4. Strong on the outside, broken alone. They are the ones who always seem composed. They take care of others, show up strong, speak calmly, and rarely lose control. To the world, they appear balanced and in charge of their lives. But behind closed doors, in the silence of their own space, they often fall apart. These are the people who suffer in private. Their strength is not always a sign of peace. It's a survival tactic. They've learned to perform normalcy so well that no one ever suspects how much they're hurting. And the more they perfect this act, the lonelier it gets. Carl Jung called this the persona, a mask each of us wears to meet the demands of society. But for those who've suffered deeply, the mask becomes a necessity. It's not just a role they play, it's protection. They've been through pain that taught them not to trust easily. Vulnerability cost them too much. So now, even when they're hurting, they smile. Even when they're overwhelmed, they say, "I'm fine." Their emotional truth gets buried under layers of responsibility, control, and the need to appear functional. Many of these people learned early on that their pain was either invisible or inconvenient to others. In childhood, they might have been told to be strong or punished for expressing sadness. As adults, they carry those lessons like invisible chains. Asking for help still feels dangerous. Showing weakness feels like failure. So they hide. Not because they want to deceive anyone, but because showing their true self feels like it would cost them everything. The persona becomes the only acceptable version of themselves. But inside, something breaks a little more each time they pretend. The mask, while polished and strong, becomes suffocating. They want to be seen, not for what they do, not for how well they handle things, but for who they are when they're not performing. They long for someone to notice their silence, to ask the second time how they're really doing. Spiritual wisdom tells us that pain that isn't acknowledged doesn't disappear. It transforms. It becomes behavior. It shows up in hyperindependence, emotional numbness, perfectionism, or the inability to trust. These aren't flaws. They're symptoms. They're the nervous system's way of saying, "I've been hurt too much, and I'm trying to stay safe." That's why spiritual awakening is not just about light, it's about truth. It's about finally being honest with yourself about the ways you've learned to survive and deciding that surviving isn't enough anymore. The healing path begins when we stop running from our pain and start sitting with it. When we recognize that the persona, while once necessary, no longer serves our growth. When we allow ourselves to be fully seen, trembling, messy, honest, and discover that love can still meet us there. Because healing doesn't require perfection. It requires permission. Permission to break. Permission to feel. Permission to be fully human. And in this courageous act of self-revelation, something sacred happens. We stop pretending. We stop performing. And slowly, we start to heal. Not because life gets easier, but because we stop hiding. And the moment we stop hiding, we remember that we are not alone. Are you tired of hiding your pain behind a strong face? If so, comment below. I choose to heal, to begin your journey toward true inner freedom. 5. Sensory sensitivity from trauma. Loud sounds pierce through like sirens. Bright lights feel like needles to the eyes. Crowds don't just feel uncomfortable, they feel suffocating. These aren't signs of weakness, nor are they dramatic reactions. They are the quiet echoes of trauma etched into the nervous system, long after the mind has tried to forget. When someone has suffered deeply, their body remembers what words cannot express. The nervous system, once overwhelmed, remains stuck in survival mode. Even in moments of peace, it's still scanning for danger. You're not overreacting, you're overprotecting, often without even realizing it. This sensory sensitivity is not simply about preference. It's a physiological response shaped by pain that was never allowed to complete its cycle. The trauma wasn't resolved, it was stored in your skin, your breath, your muscles, your reactions. This is why a sudden noise can make your heart race, or why too many voices in a room make you want to leave without explanation. Your body is carrying memories that your mind may no longer consciously recall. It's not your fault. It's not in your head. It's in your nervous system. Carl Jung once said, "There's no coming to consciousness without pain." What you are experiencing is not fragility. It's the aftermath of surviving something that tried to shatter you. And sometimes, that survival turns your senses into warning systems. They don't mean you're broken. They mean you've been alert for so long, your body forgot how to rest. You're still bracing for impact, even when the danger is gone. And yet, for those on the path of spiritual awakening, this heightened sensitivity is not just a symptom, it's also a signal. As you begin to heal, you start feeling everything more. Pain, yes, but also energy, truth, vibration. This sensitivity becomes a spiritual compass. You start noticing things others don't. You walk into a room and feel the tension before a word is spoken. You sense dishonesty, emotional shifts, even spiritual dissonance. What once felt like a burden slowly reveals itself to be a gift if guided with compassion. The body keeps the score, but it also offers the clues. Healing means gently rewiring the signals, teaching your nervous system that the war is over. Through breathwork, grounding, and trauma-informed practices, you're not just coping, you're reprogramming your reality. You're peeling back the layers of your pain and finding yourself underneath. That's the sacred labor of healing. To sit with the discomfort, to decode what your body has been trying to tell you, and to slowly return to safety. If you find yourself overwhelmed by what others seem to tolerate with ease, don't rush to fix it. Listen to it. Your sensitivity is a messenger. It reveals not just where you've been hurt, but where you're waking up. This is the raw truth of spiritual awakening. It doesn't arrive in peace and silence. It begins in chaos, in overstimulation, in feeling far too much. But that's how the light gets in, through the very cracks that once made you feel broken. If this message resonates with your journey, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss insights that support your healing. Comment below, "I deserve to feel safe in my body," to affirm your path toward peace and restoration. 6. Obsessive need for control. Control isn't always about power. For those who've suffered deeply, it often becomes a way to protect themselves from emotional chaos. When life has felt unpredictable, when pain or abandonment arrived, without warning, the mind begins to seek structure as a shield. You might not be trying to dominate people or events. You're trying to avoid the overwhelm that comes when things fall apart. Planning becomes your way of coping. From the outside, it might look like perfectionism or discipline, but inside, it's an effort to keep fear and anxiety from erupting. People who've been hurt often micromanage their world not because they love control, but because they fear what happens without it. If you've ever mapped out every possible scenario before a simple meeting, rehearsed conversations in your head, or felt panicked when plans changed, then you understand. Carl Jung said it best. The ego tries to control what the unconscious does not want to face. This isn't just a quote, it's a mirror. The pain you haven't dealt with, it hides. And your ego, sensing the threat, tightens its grip on the world around you to avoid feeling it. That's why control becomes a silent strategy of survival. Beneath the routines and rituals lies a wound that says, if I can just stay ahead of everything, I won't get hurt again. But the truth is, no amount of control can protect you from life. And the more we try to script every outcome, the more we lose touch with flow, intuition, and presence. What began as protection can become a prison. Consider someone like Emma, a successful project manager who seems effortlessly in control of everything. But behind the meetings, spreadsheets, and deadlines is someone who grew up in a household of broken promises. She clings to plans because she remembers what it felt like when no one showed up. For her, being in control isn't just a habit, it's a way to never feel abandoned again. And yet, deep down, she knows the peace she's looking for can't come from fixing the outside. It has to start within. Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom reveals that healing begins not with control, but with self-integration. As you awaken spiritually, you begin to see that control is often fear wearing the mask of competence. The deeper truth is that chaos is part of life, and your healing lies in allowing yourself to exist within it, not to be consumed by it, but to learn how to breathe inside it. When you stop demanding certainty and start building inner safety, the world outside no longer has to bend to your will for you to feel calm. So if you recognize yourself here, let that recognition be your beginning. Control was never your flaw. It was your response to unpredictability. But now, with deeper awareness, you can gently loosen the grip. You can face what once felt unbearable, not by forcing it into order, but by meeting it with compassion. And in doing so, you reclaim a power far greater than control the power of peace. If you've ever felt the need to control everything just to feel safe, you're not alone. If this message speaks to you, declare it in the comments. I release control and choose inner peace. 7. Silence as a safe haven. Silence isn't avoidance. It's often the very first step in healing. For those who have suffered deeply, silence becomes a sacred ground where the soul can finally exhale. They're not hiding from the world. They're protecting their energy from the constant noise, expectations, and emotional turbulence that once broke them. In a culture that demands reaction, their silence is a quiet rebellion, a conscious act of preservation. They know that not every wound needs to be spoken aloud to be healed. Some things are processed in stillness, where the spirit can speak louder than words. Retreating into silence is how they shield their essence from harsh judgments, surface-level interactions, and environments that don't feel safe. These individuals have learned through pain that too much stimulation distorts their inner compass. So they step back, not out of weakness, but out of deep spiritual wisdom. They know healing doesn't always look loud or visible. It often happens in the quiet moments, when no one is watching, when the heart is finally still enough to be heard. But while silence offers refuge, it also carries a shadow. When unbroken for too long, silence can shift into isolation. The very space that once felt like a sanctuary can become a cage. The world outside starts to feel distant, unreachable. They may begin to believe that no one could possibly understand the weight they carry. This is where the spiritual path asks for courage, the courage to emerge slowly, to let in just a bit of light, to risk connection again, even after being hurt. True spiritual wisdom lies in knowing when to retreat and when to return. It means listening deeply to the soul's need for solitude, while also honoring the heart's quiet longing for belonging. It's learning to distinguish between peaceful solitude and silent suffering. Healing through silence doesn't mean disappearing forever. It means coming back with new clarity, softer edges, and stronger boundaries. And when they do speak again, their words carry depth. Their presence radiates stillness. Their energy becomes magnetic, not because they shouted to be heard, but because they honored their own need to heal in silence first. So they live between two worlds, the inner sanctuary, where they remember who they are, and the outer world, where they slowly begin to be seen again. They carry the wisdom of silence within them, knowing that they don't have to explain their pain to be valid, nor their growth to be worthy. Their stillness becomes their strength. Their quiet becomes their power. And in that sacred space between words, they find something far greater than comfort they find themselves. Leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any healing wisdom like this. If silence has ever been your safe space, type in the comments, "My silence is sacred, and I honor it." 8. Guarded heart and difficulty. Trusting. Trust, for those who have suffered deeply, often feels like a battlefield. It's not that they don't want to connect, it's that their past has taught them that love can hurt, and opening up can lead to devastation. Every time someone reaches out with kindness or affection, their heart doesn't respond with joy. It responds with caution. The unconscious mind, shaped by past betrayals, still views love through a lens of fear and defense. It's like trying to drink water through a filter filled with dust. No matter how pure the water, the taste is still tainted. People with guarded hearts often seem distant, emotionally unavailable, or cold. But beneath that exterior is a person who has known what it means to be vulnerable and unprotected, and who has paid the price for it. Trust, to them, isn't a gift freely given. It's a test, a slow, uncertain process. Every expression of love is met with suspicion, not because they're unkind, but because they remember what happened the last time they let someone in. Their body remembers the abandonment, the heartbreak, the silence that followed the promises. Their nervous system has been rewired to associate closeness with pain. This is especially true for those undergoing a spiritual awakening. In the process of awakening, old emotional wounds rise to the surface, often triggered by new relationships or situations that mirror the past. The heart may want connection, but the inner child still trembles. It's not just psychological, it's spiritual. A person's energy field, shaped by layers of trauma, creates a kind of emotional armor. And even when love knocks, they might not open the door. Not out of malice, but out of habit, out of survival. So what looks like independence is often the byproduct of pain. Hyperindependence becomes a shield. It says, I'll do it all myself, so I don't have to be let down. What looks like strength may actually be unhealed sorrow. And what looks like disinterest might be a desperate attempt to stay safe. They don't reject love because they don't need it. They reject it because it feels too dangerous to want it. But even the most guarded hearts crave to be understood. Deep down, they want to trust someone who won't abandon them when things get hard. Someone who sees the cracks in their armor and doesn't run. Someone who understands that underneath all the hesitation is a soul that loves with intensity, but has simply forgotten how to show it without fear. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This truth is especially relevant here. The path forward is not forcing yourself to trust too soon. It's learning to sit with the fear, acknowledge it, and slowly teach your heart a new way. A way that doesn't rush healing, but nurtures it with compassion. A way that doesn't demand instant openness, but respects the journey it takes to get there. In spiritual awakening, one learns that healing doesn't mean erasing the past. It means learning how to live alongside it without letting it rule you. Trust begins with the self, with creating safety within your own body, with honoring your boundaries, and with offering yourself the love that was once denied. Only then can true connection become possible, not from a place of fear, but from a place of spiritual wisdom and peace. If this message resonates with you, repeat after me. I am ready to receive love with an open heart. I trust that healing is possible. 9. Strong sense of justice. People who carry a strong sense of justice are not merely opinionated. They are often survivors of deep injustice themselves. Beneath their intensity lies a wounded heart that once endured betrayal when they were too young, too trusting, and too defenseless to fight back. That early experience left them hypersensitive to unfairness. What others may perceive as overreaction or rigidity is, in truth, a defense mechanism forged by emotional survival. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And for those shaped by injustice, accepting the part of themselves that aches for fairness is both terrifying and transformative. As they grow, these individuals often become protectors of dignity and moral warriors, not only for themselves, but for anyone whose voice has been silenced. Their strong sense of right and wrong is not fueled by ego, but by empathy. When they witness injustice, it triggers something visceral, something sacred. They are unable to stay silent because silence once cost them their own safety, their own truth. Their passion is a scar turned into purpose, and that purpose often marks the beginning of a spiritual awakening, an awakening that reveals their suffering was never in vain, that it was preparing them to become defenders of light in a world so often shrouded in shadow. In everyday life, you might notice them as the person who speaks up when someone is being mistreated, or the one who questions a system that others accept blindly. Their moral compass doesn't allow them to turn a blind eye, not because they enjoy confrontation, but because they are spiritually and psychologically unable to betray their inner truth. Their fire is not just anger, it is wisdom born of pain. According to Carl Jung, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. These people have done the inner work. They've turned their unconscious wounds into conscious awareness, and in doing so, they've reclaimed their power. And yet, this power doesn't always come with applause. Often, they are misunderstood. Their boundaries are labeled as coldness, their honesty mistaken for aggression. But make no mistake, these souls are not hard. They are healed. And their strength is not bitterness, but clarity. Their fierce stand for fairness comes from a place of knowing how it feels to be unseen, unheard, and unprotected. Their presence alone is transformative. They challenge others simply by existing. They remind people to think, to feel, and to act with integrity. And in doing so, they stir the conscience of the collective. Their life is a message that justice is not abstract, it is lived. That truth is not convenient, it is necessary. That spiritual wisdom isn't found in comfort, it's born in fire. And from that fire, they emerge not as victims of the past, but as carriers of a higher truth. If you resonate with this message and feel called to stand for what's right, comment below. I am a voice for justice and truth. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to receive more soul-aligned content like this. 10. Seeing the invisible pain in others. They don't wear their pain on their sleeves, but they carry it in their eyes, in how they notice what others ignore, in how they pause before speaking, in the way their energy shifts when someone around them is silently suffering. After deep emotional wounding, something changes in the nervous system and in the soul. They develop what can only be described as emotional radar. It's not magic. It's not some mystical sixth sense. It is memory, transformed into empathy. They've walked through invisible storms, and now, without even trying, they can sense when someone else is caught in the same winds. Every slight shift in tone, every flicker of discomfort on a person's face, every unusually long pause, these become signals. While others overlook them, people who have suffered deeply absorb them like instinct. They've had to survive on this awareness before. When you grow up or live in chaos, reading the room becomes a survival skill. They learn to notice the difference between a smile that's genuine and one that's just a mask. They sense when someone's silence is heavy, not peaceful. And what might seem like extraordinary sensitivity is actually the result of years of internal rewiring, a spiritual wisdom earned through the pain they never asked for, but lived through anyway. This heightened perception becomes part of who they are. It shapes how they move through the world. When they look at you, they're not just seeing your face, they're reading your energy. They're quietly asking, are you really okay? Or are you just pretending to be? And most of the time, they already know the answer. It's not that they want to pry. It's that their soul is always listening beneath the surface, always reaching toward the things that are left unsaid. There's a quiet kind of power in this gift. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand. It simply recognizes. You may have met someone like this, a person who makes you feel seen without needing you to explain yourself, who somehow understands your pain without you having to speak it. That's not coincidence. That's someone whose own suffering has given birth to a deep and unshakable compassion. They don't rescue. They don't fix. They just hold space, fully present, letting you know that your hidden emotions are not invisible to them. And in that moment, something sacred happens. You feel less alone. You soften. Because to be seen, truly seen, is one of the deepest human needs. And those who have walked through the fire know exactly what that feels like. Their empathy is not performative. It's not forced. It flows naturally because it was forged in silence, in isolation, in nights spent holding their own broken pieces. Now, they carry that spiritual wisdom like a quiet light, illuminating what others can't see. If you're still here with us, comment below. I see beyond the surface. Your voice matters, and your empathy helps create a space for healing. 11. Fear of being a burden. They say sorry for existing, even when no one's accusing them. They shy away from asking for help, even when their world is falling apart. They downplay their needs so much that they almost forget they have any. This isn't humility, it's emotional survival. And behind this quiet behavior is a deep-rooted fear. The fear of being a burden. It's a wound carved in silence, often during childhood, when their emotions were either dismissed, ignored, or criticized. In homes where love was conditional, or where expressing pain invited punishment or indifference, they learned one thing early: don't need too much. Don't feel too much. Don't be too much. Carl Jung called this unconscious guilt, a belief buried so deep that it drives a person's behavior without their awareness. It whispers, don't inconvenience others. Your presence must never be heavy. Your needs must never take up space. This belief doesn't shout. It hides in small gestures, over-apologizing, staying silent in discomfort, feeling anxious after asking for support, or even guilt after receiving kindness. These people give more than they take, not out of pure generosity, but from an inner script that says they must earn their right to exist. This kind of inner conditioning turns relationships into silent negotiations. They become the fixers, the listeners, the dependable ones who never seem to crack, but not because they're strong. It's because they don't think they're allowed to be weak. Beneath the calm surface, there's a deep exhaustion, a loneliness that comes from never really being seen, only being useful. This fear of being a burden robs them of intimacy, because how can you fully connect when part of you is always trying to shrink? Spiritual awakening begins the moment they realize this fear isn't truth. It's trauma. It's not their fault. It's a survival pattern born from emotional starvation. And waking up means seeing it clearly, without judgment. It means slowly dismantling the belief that their needs are a threat, that their pain is an inconvenience. Healing starts when they practice receiving kindness without guilt, love without suspicion, rest without justification. They begin to notice the tension in their body when they speak about themselves, and they learn to soften it. They start small, allowing someone to carry something for them, asking for space when overwhelmed, or simply stating, I need help, without a flood of shame. This isn't weakness, it's courage. As Jung once said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And this is where the deepest spiritual wisdom lies, realizing that your vulnerability isn't your flaw, it's your portal. To feel is not to be broken. To need is not to be selfish. To ask is not to burden. True awakening is not about detachment. It's about returning to the parts of yourself you exiled just to survive. Every time someone chooses to believe they are not a burden, they rewrite a painful story. They reclaim their worth. They let go of the invisible chains that kept them small. And in doing so, they invite others to do the same. That is the ripple effect of healing. That is spiritual awakening in motion. If this message speaks to your soul, comment below. I am not a burden. My presence is a blessing. Let this truth begin to heal the hidden guilt. And if someone you love needs to hear this, don't hesitate to share it. Healing is meant to be shared. 12. Gratitude for the small things. They've learned to treasure the smallest things, not because life has always been kind, but because pain has taught them to notice what truly matters. The morning sunlight filtering gently through the blinds, the quiet comfort of a warm cup of coffee, the unexpected kindness in a stranger's eyes. These aren't insignificant details anymore. When someone has known deep suffering, even the simplest moment becomes a reason to stay present. The ordinary becomes extraordinary. It's not about pretending to be happy or masking sadness. It's about finding meaning in the subtle, often overlooked textures of life. This isn't about glorifying trauma or turning pain into a performance. People who have survived deep wounds carry emotional depth, but they don't seek validation for it. They don't wear their scars to impress anyone. Their wisdom is soft, but it's solid. Carl Jung described this process as the emergence of the wise one after confronting the shadow. That shadow, the grief, the fear, the past that hurt, no longer controls them. Instead, it becomes part of their strength. The transformation happens quietly, deep within. They don't need to announce it, because it shows in how they pause before speaking, how they listen more than they talk, how they smile even when no one's watching. You'll find that these people often have a grounded presence. They're not easily impressed by status or overwhelmed by chaos. They've seen how quickly things can fall apart, so they cling to what's real. A calm conversation, a deep breath, the ability to sit in silence and feel okay. They move slowly, but with intention. Their choices are not rushed. They've stopped chasing what doesn't matter. And when they give you their attention, it's sincere, because they know what it feels like to be unheard, unseen, misunderstood. Maya, a mother of two I met during a spiritual retreat, once told me that after years of emotional turmoil and financial struggles, she began to find joy in the most unexpected places. The smell of rice cooking, the sound of her children breathing while they slept, the simple peace of not being yelled at. I used to cry when the sun came up, she said, because it meant I had survived the night. She didn't need grand gestures to feel alive. Her spiritual awakening came from those quiet moments of relief when survival slowly transformed into gratitude and then into peace. Those who've suffered deeply often carry this sacred awareness. They don't waste time arguing over petty things. They don't rush to judge. They're not impressed by loudness or flashiness. Instead, they value depth, stillness, truth. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And these individuals have done just that. They've faced their darkness and emerged softer, not harder. That softness isn't fragility. It's a quiet strength that says, I've seen what breaks a person, and I've chosen to remain open anyway. Pain taught them to slow down, to breathe, to love gently. And in doing so, they became a rare kind of human one who doesn't overlook life's small blessings, but instead builds their entire healing around them. What small moment are you grateful for today? Share it in the comments. I'd love to hear how life's quiet blessings have shaped your journey. Your story might be the light someone else needs today. 13. Search for purpose after pain. People who have suffered deeply often reach a point where pain is no longer something they try to escape. It becomes something they must make sense of. They need their pain to mean something. It's not enough to survive. They want their wounds to have a voice, a purpose. So they begin to channel that suffering into acts of kindness, creativity, or quiet service to others. They become the people who see sadness in someone else's eyes and know exactly what to say. They write, sing, build, nurture, not to erase their pain, but to transform it into something that heals others. This is where suffering shifts into meaning, where brokenness becomes a tool for connection. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming whole, by integrating pain, shadow, and light into a new self. When this begins, life is no longer just about getting through the day. It becomes about living with clarity, direction, and purpose. They stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and begin to ask, "What can I create from this?" That shift changes everything. They begin to see themselves not as victims of fate, but as authors of a new narrative. And that narrative is fueled by spiritual wisdom, not the kind found in books, but the kind born from tears, silence, and surrender. These individuals stop living on autopilot. Their decisions become intentional. They no longer say yes out of fear or no out of habit. They pause, breathe, and choose in alignment with the person they are becoming. Even small actions, a morning walk, a deep conversation, a boundary set with love, become sacred. They don't just exist anymore. They live fully, presently, consciously. A woman once said, after years of grief, "I didn't want my story to end in pain. I wanted to use it to begin again." And so she did, by showing up for others, by creating beauty out of heartache. That is the essence of spiritual wisdom. It's not about pretending the suffering didn't happen. It's about letting it guide you to a higher purpose. Those who have walked through fire don't come back the same. They come back radiant, stripped of illusions, carrying a gentleness that only the brokenhearted understand. They no longer need applause or recognition. The reward is in the way they live. They speak softly, but their presence is loud. They walk lightly, but their impact is deep. And through this transformation, they offer a rare kind of healing to a world still afraid of its wounds. Their pain did not destroy them. It became the doorway to their most authentic self. And so, the search for purpose after pain is not a detour. It is the path. It is the unfolding of a soul into its fullest expression. It is the quiet revolution of turning scars into stories and stories into light. As we reflect on these 13 traits, let it be a reminder that your pain has shaped a powerful depth within you. Your presence here means you're not just surviving, you're transforming. Comment below, "My pain became my wisdom," to honor how far you've come. Now, let's continue this journey of spiritual growth together. Thank you for spending this time with us on Spiritual Wisdom. If today's message resonated with you, remember you are not alone. Behind every strong soul is a story of silent battles and quiet victories. The traits we've explored aren't signs of weakness, but proof of survival, depth, and inner strength. If you found value in this video, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss an episode that could bring you healing, clarity, and deeper understanding. And before you go, we'd love to hear from you. Which of these 13 traits spoke to your heart the most? Leave a comment and let's grow together in wisdom and compassion.